Ever slip on a shirt and think, how do they get these colors so bright? Or, man, this fabric feels amazing. Well, get ready, because today we're going deep. You sent in some cool stuff from RoleCatcher about textile chemical quality technicians, so let's unravel what's going on behind the seams, so to speak.
It's really interesting stuff. Most people don't even realize, like, how much actual science goes into something as simple as a t-shirt, you know?
Totally. Right now, I'm picturing a textile chemical quality technician. They're in a lab, right? Surrounded by beakers, colorful liquids, the whole shebang. But what are they actually doing all day?
Okay, so imagine this. A lab where they're testing fabric swatches, like they're puzzle pieces or something. The technician is making sure all those pieces fit together perfectly. They test all kinds of fabrics, cotton, silk, even those super high-tech synthetic materials. And one of their big tasks is checking something called dye fastness.
Dye fastness.
Yep.
That sounds important.
It's super important. Think about it. You do a load of laundry, and suddenly your white shirt is pink because the red shirt in the wash had bad dye fastness. Not a good look. Textile Chemical Quality Technicians make sure that doesn't happen. They test how well the colors stay put after washing, being out in the sun, even like sweat.
Wow, so they're like the guardians of our laundry baskets. What other tests are they running?
They're checking the pH levels of the fabrics, too.
pH levels. Is that like what we learned in high school chemistry?
Exactly. See, fabrics can't be too acidic or too alkaline, you know? It can mess with the material, even irritate your skin. These technicians, they make sure the fabric is safe to wear and that it lasts. And speaking of lasting, they also test the fabric's strength.
Okay, so that's where the durability comes in.
Yeah, exactly. There are a bunch of different strength tests. Like, there's tear strength. That tells you how much force it takes to actually rip the fabric. And then there's tensile strength, which measures how far it stretches before it breaks. Super important for making sure your clothes don't fall apart after just a few wears.
Wow. I had no idea how much goes into making sure my clothes are, well, clothes. This is making me think about those jeans I had.
Yeah.
You know, the ones that seemed like they could survive anything. They must have aced those strength tests.
Probably.
Yeah.
And here's another thing. Textile chemical quality technicians, they're not just off doing their own thing in a lab. They're working with designers and manufacturers to make sure those creative ideas, those visions, actually become real wearable clothes.
So they're like bridging the gap between fashion and science.
Totally. A designer might have this awesome idea for a print or a certain drape, but it's the technician's expertise that makes sure it can really happen while still being high quality and safe. They're the ones making sure a silk scarf feels luxurious and lasts, or that your workout leggings can handle even the toughest workout.
Now that's cool. Speaking of the science side, what does their lab actually look like? What kind of equipment are we talking about?
Picture this. High-powered microscopes so they can see the structure of the fabric super close up. Spectrophotometers for measuring how accurate the colors are.
Spectrophotometers. Now those sound pretty high-tech.
Oh, they are. They measure how much light passes through a material or how much is absorbed, which is super important for making sure the color is consistent every single time. And they've got machines that can basically mimic what a washing machine does to fabric, but way faster. That way they don't have to wait months and months to see how a fabric holds up after a ton of washes.
Wow, that's way more advanced than the chemistry set I had as a kid. It seems like working in that kind of lab takes a special set of skills. It's not just about knowing your chemicals, is it?
You got it. It's not just about the chemicals. To really nail this job, you gotta be sharp. Sure, knowing your chemistry is like the base layer, but you need critical thinking too. Gotta analyze that data, troubleshoot when things go wrong, figure out why a fabric's acting up.
So it's kind of like being a textile detective. You're piecing together all the clues from these tests, using what you know to solve the case.
That's a great way to put it. And don't forget the math.
Oh, right. I bet there's a ton of measuring and calculating during those tests.
For sure. You're working with formulas all the time, figuring out the right ratios for dyes and chemicals, making sense of all the data from the tests. If you want to be a textile chemical quality technician, you got to have your math game down.
It really hits you how much is going on behind the scenes, just to make sure the clothes we buy are up to par. So for someone who's like, hey, that sounds like my jam, where do they even start?
Usually you'll begin as a junior technician. It's all about learning the ropes, you know, mastering those basic tests, getting comfy with the equipment, and soaking up all the knowledge from those senior technicians.
Kind of like an apprenticeship, but for textile chemistry.
Exactly. And as you get more experience, more confidence, you can climb that ladder to a more senior role.
So what does that look like? What's a senior technician doing differently?
Well, as a senior tech, you might be running those more complex tests on your own, analyzing the data, even mentoring the junior techs, passing on all that hard-earned wisdom. You might even get to develop totally new testing methods or tackle the really tricky problems that pop up.
Sounds like there's a real path for growth right there in the lab. But what about outside the lab? What other doors open up with this kind of background?
That's the exciting part. This job can be a launch pad into so many different areas of the textile industry. For example, you could become a quality control supervisor. You'd be leading a whole team of technicians, making sure all the textile products are top-notch.
Makes sense. Taking on more responsibility, more of a leadership role in the whole quality control process.
Yep. Or if you're more into the research side, the innovation side, you could head into a research and development role.
So you could work on creating completely new fabrics, sustainable materials, maybe even those smart textiles we were talking about.
You got it. You could be on the cutting edge of textile tech, working on the materials of the future. And speaking of the future, how about we zoom out a bit and talk about the textile industry as a whole?
Love it. It's a huge industry, right? Global even. Huge. Oh, doesn't even cut it. And it never sits still, right?
Yeah.
Always changing. We were talking about how much they need skilled people like these textile chemistry pros. What's that demand look like with such a big worldwide industry?
Honestly, it's a really good time to be in this field. Companies are really looking for qualified people, especially those who get the chemistry side and quality control. That demand just keeps going up.
Music to the ears of anyone thinking about this kind of career. And it's not just about the science itself now, is it? The whole textile world is getting more into like being eco-friendly. These technicians, what's their part in all that?
Yeah.
Making things more sustainable.
Oh, that's huge now, for sure. People buying clothes, they're way more aware of like what that does to the environment. So now you see this big push for materials and ways of doing things that are better for the planet. And textile chemical quality technicians, they're right there leading the charge.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah.
They're the ones testing out these new sustainable fabrics, making sure they're just as good as the stuff we're used to.
Exactly. They'll be testing dyes made from natural things, like plants, even insects sometimes, instead of all those harsh chemicals. And they're figuring out better ways to finish the fabrics, ones that use less water and energy, less impact on the environment, which is the goal.
It's kind of mind-blowing when you think about it. The clothes we wear, maybe they can actually become better for the planet, and it's because of the work these technicians are doing behind the scenes. Earlier, we were talking about smart clothes, those high-tech fabrics. What kind of curveballs do those throw at you when it comes to testing?
Oh man, that's where things get really wild. Imagine you've got to test how tough those conductive threads are. The ones that can track your heart rate, and they've got to last through wash after wash. Or making sure the electronics tucked inside a jacket, those can handle being worn and washed over and over.
Never even thought about that. So how do you even start testing something like that?
You basically need a whole new playbook for testing, new
Yeah.
standards. Got to think about things like, okay, how well does the fabric still conduct electricity after it's been washed a bunch? How long does the battery last on something that's built in? Can it handle electromagnetic interference? It's a whole new world in textile testing.
It's like where fashion meets cutting-edge tech.
Yeah.
So we've gone deep into this world of textile chemistry, learned a ton. If there's one big takeaway you want our listeners to walk away with, what would it be?
Those clothes we put on every day without even really thinking about it, they exist because of some really cool science, creative people, and this dedication to quality. There's this whole team of dedicated people like those textile chemical quality technicians working behind the scenes to make sure what we're wearing is not just stylish and comfortable, but also safe, long-lasting, and more good for the planet.
I know, I'll never look at my closet the same way. Thanks to those textile wizards, we can get dressed and know that every stitch, every seam, there was so much thought and skill that went into it.
Couldn't have said it better myself.
So next time you're picking out that shirt, the one with the perfect color, built like a tank, maybe even a little bit smart, take a second to think about that hidden world of textile chemistry that made it all happen. And that's a wrap on today's deep dive into textile chemical quality. Until next time, stay curious, and we'll catch you on the next episode.